This is Brad Hutchings, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're getting something done. And look, I love being able to chat with Brad. Brad enlightens me and forces me to think about problems, especially when it comes to computer problems, in a whole new way. I'm not a computer person, but you know, Brad, back in the old days, like when I had to screw around in school and had to make up something in summer school, I would usually take some kind of computer class. So I learned basic. You know,
Nice.
I'm comfortable around a trash 80. And when we had a computer lab, gosh, back in the 80s, man, you know, that was remarkable to even have a computer lab. And at one point, it had like four computers, PCs, and they were in their own little LAN. You know, and we didn't even know to call it a LAN back then. They were just networked together, whatever the fuck that meant, right?
Right.
And so we go back to the very beginnings of this. I was thinking about this the other day. You know, we talk about like someone like Laura Ingalls Wilder, who travels to Missouri on a wagon in her lifetime when she moves, right, with her husband. And then she dies in 59. There's things in space in 59, you know?
Yes.
10 years later, we're on the damn moon. It's incredible.
Allegedly. Sure.
But we've done the same thing here, right? We went, and you and I both are from the Bay, so this is the birthplace of all this stuff. I remember in the early 80s when like my down the street neighbor, Andy, his dad was a ham radio guy and he had an Apple. And he's like, I know the guy that invented the mouse. These guys were our neighbors, right? Like we knew these people.
Yeah, I was a neighbor. I didn't invent the mouse. But right, we had an Apple too. It was all my other friends had Atari 2600s or the like. One of them had an Odyssey game console. That was trash. One friend did have a trash 80, 20 go to 10, right? 30 go sub 100. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's those are the days.
Yeah. So when I say all this, because now we look at like the forefront of where we are, and I remember the early 90s and when polygons were coming into video games, and I used to love playing the Star Wars video games like X-Wing and everything, and I saw the latest version of it on a CD-ROM, and I'm like, that almost looks real, you know, because it was so different than a square with an arrow coming out of it. Like, that's you with a sword, you know. God, was that Dragon Hunter or that game was?
Couple of blocks, yeah.
Yeah, and so we've come so far where you know the image I created for this episode, I used GROK for it, and it took a couple of tries, but I got the AI to create an image faster than I would have done it myself, unless I had the source material. So if I don't have to source something, I can do it pretty quick. But otherwise, if I have to source it, I got to figure it out. I got to maybe do, you know, and it might take me 10, 15 minutes to do something, but you know, it took me, I don't know, 5 minutes maybe to create this image. So it's amazing to go from a square with an arrow, and that's you with a sword, to where we are now. And I can say, create for me a purple fire breathing dragon, and then there it'll be. It's amazing. But it's also, is the world a better place? Are we doing this better? It all seems like it's sort of, and well, we're talking about an illusion. A lot of it is, it seems like it's bullshit.
Pete, we'd be outside throwing basketballs at each other right now in the 80s, and here we are, you know, hooked up with cameras, and you know, I've got lights and nice microphone, and we're having a discussion, and you know, you're actually closer to me now in Santa Ana than I think you were in Benicia, you know, when I was growing up in Danville, right?
Close enough. Yeah, right. Yeah, approximately the same distance with no car, light years away from each other.
And you know, if we were next door, we'd still be doing this Zoom, or we'd still be using StreamYard, right? I mean, that's
maybe.
Kind of that's a difference too. Distance.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I was on Balad, which is a camp in Iraq when we were there mid 2000s, and someone I knew from Chicago was on the same camp as me, and I unasked out of my chair, and I went and I saw him one time the entire year we were both deployed there, you know, and we weren't ever more than, I mean, at any given point in time, we're never more than a mile apart, maybe 3 miles tops. If I was all the way on the other side in the Iraqi camp and he was in his office, and we ate in the same chow hall, never, ever saw him. Both of us too busy to spend any time together. And we lived in the exact same like footprint. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, look, now that the election's over, the big piece of social strife is people being returned to office so they can Zoom with people in the Philippines. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we have big problems, Pete. We have huge problems
Yeah.
with technology.
So when we do look at technology, a lot of times it's like, oh, this is going to save us time. That's proven to be false over and over and over again, because I feel like we're just busier than ever. We just offshore or off us some of that work, and AI appears to be trying to do that, right? Engineers are always trying to figure out how to unengineer or how to engineer solutions to make whoever it is, the file clerk, less important, right? And give them something else to do and free them up.
We create a lot of busy work trying to replace other people's work. That is a repeat offense of the industry since the day I started, for sure.
The other thing too is like I never even heard the word workflow until somewhat recently, right? So the terms of art change, but I don't need to write my workflow down. I am the workflow. And so I don't need to write it down. I don't need someone to tell me how to improve. Like, you always tell me to make a list. And I'm like, I don't need to make a list. Don't want to make a list. Not going to follow a list. So let's save us all that trouble for shit that I'm not going to use. But it's essential in your line of work to understand the process so that you can automate parts of the process. But at some point, we just can't automate everything. So there are things that are valuable to me, but if I'm writing a summary for this episode, right? Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think about keywords. I'm trying to think about things that people might search. And so maybe the computer it probably can't be trained to do that. But by the time I go and I sit down and I get something and I've read it 5 times that the computer offers, I should have just wrote the damn thing myself, right? And you know me, I'm big on where is the work. So don't just give me work. Like my friends are adorable. They're like, oh, you have that podcast. Here's what you ought to do. And I'm like, man, I don't need more work. You want to help? I'm talking to everybody now for real. If you want to help me, contribute to the show. Down below is a little streamer going by. That PayPal, or go to breakitdownshow.com, hit the PayPal link and put money in there. That's how you help me, right? Because I know where the work is. I know what I need to put my hands on to improve my show. I'm just limited by time, personnel, budget.
So Pete, let me tell you the most interesting class I had in college 30 some odd years ago. And this was an upper division software engineering class. Software engineering at the time, you hear the term now and it's like, okay, people who program, they're software engineers. So at the time, it was kind of this new term. And we were, mostly in the industry called programmers during the 80s. And you might remember early in the 80s, we started calling the people that pick up our trash from our homes sanitation engineers. And it wasn't just making fun of their jobs and saying, hey, you're a sanitation engineer. It was actually kind of promoting their work and giving dignity to their work. And there still people today will call people who haul trash sanitation engineers. At the time, we're trying to, as an industry, and as a discipline, we're trying to kind of find our feet, and we start calling it software engineering. And it wasn't lost on a lot of us that they were trying to dignify something that was, okay, you sit in a closet and type code all day, make things, maybe wash your hair once a week. But one of the interesting things in the software engineering classes is I had a professor who came in and he gave 2 guest lectures. He was actually the chairman of the department at UC Irvine at the time. His name was Lee Osterweil. And he talked about this thing called process programming. And he turned this into a career, like 30 years of research. He went on to Amherst and is a real leader in the field and stuff. But at the time, he was having his grad students go and find activities they did during the day and kind of write these pseudo programs. It wasn't like formal. It wasn't like in BASIC, like you said, or, any other language per se, but it was like, write some pseudocode for how you make your coffee, write some pseudocode for how you bake a cake or whatever else. And they were really interesting. He was showing us some of these programs, and, you kind of look at it and you think, oh yeah, hey, that actually is more of what we do than really thinking things out. I mean, even you, Pete, with I'm not going to write down a list or whatever else, you've probably got this process program going on in your head that says, hey, I need to do this, 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 and this. I mean, we have, pilots have checklists that they go through, for taking a plane out. We have these all over the place. And in fact, they're a very, very important part of how we actually think, whether we formalize them or not. You go through your routine before a show and, like you said, Don't tell me how to do my routine, contribute to the link down there below. But yeah, it's a really interesting area because, when we talk about, hey, can these AI systems, can they reason? It's very funny that we don't go, hey, can they come up with a process program for how we do things? It's no, can they use their reason and figure this out? That's kind of how I know that people are thinking about this the wrong way, because they're not thinking like we think. We don't always think things through and have the reasons perfectly outlined, and have your debate team debate my debate team, and then people will vote at the end to decide who wins. That's not how it works.
When you write algorithms, I took math for non-math majors, and so I got to learn about Euler. And so that's why I always talk about him. And it was one of the best classes I ever took. And it's great for a guy like me. I understand math, but algebra is just beyond. I don't know if I have dyscalculia. I don't know. But
as he talks about abstract algebra and says that he can't do algebra. Okay, I got you, Pete. I got you.
No, I'm fine talking about that part of it. But when you try to make a path from beginning work to the end of my work, and you don't talk to the person who does the work, right? And this is what engineers often do. They make a system, and it's like, well, that system is nice. Now, I'll just use StreamYard as an example. When I turned on StreamYard the other day, they say, first off, they gave me a problem I didn't want. They had a whole bunch of errors. And it's like, one of them was, you're going to lose your connection to X in 27,442 days. I'm like, thanks for a problem that I don't have. And now I have to X out of all these things in the menu because they're blocking the damn work screen,
And you had to do the math in your head to figure out that was, 8 years?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
No, it's 75 years.
Oh, right. Okay. There you go.
So when I look at, so then StreamYard also bugs me yesterday because I didn't ask them to do this. They're like, hey, well, you take a survey. I'm like, yeah, sure. I want the product to be better. And so they're asking me all these questions. But again, they're thinking like engineers. So they're asking like, do you have a workflow? For example, would be one of the questions. And I'll say yes. Do you use our program to help you with your workflow? No. Sometimes, right? Or no, really, right? I mean, they do help me with my workflow, right? To set everything up. But and they're like, what other program do you use? So that's none of your goddamn business. Like you don't get to, you want to pay me to ask me that because this is my workflow. And then they never once, and you're going to know exactly where I'm going with this. They never once ask me, what do I actually fucking need? Yeah.
Nobody.
They never go, like what tool? I mean, for a dude that does thousands of these damn things, do you think I maybe have some idea of the landscape of what it is to do? And I hate the audio and way all the engineers look at audio. It's like, stop with this baby level audio stuff. If you can't handle it with your software, let me have control. So I know what's going on, right? I don't know what the show sounds like right now. And so I have to go and turn my phone on and listen to my phone live. And now I'm listening to an echo of it. And it's just the worst solution. But they never ask about that. They want to put another tool on there that I don't even need.
Yeah.
So when I think about that,
a little needle to go with your audio, so you can look at that rather than looking at the camera like you're supposed to. You can pay attention to that little graph down there.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is
there. Oh yeah, look at that. Yep. It looks good. Oh shit. Hi everybody.
I know, right? Can I hear you now, Pete?
When we have AI, it seems like there's a lot of that where they've cut the actual end user out. They'll hire someone to tell you about the end user experience, but they're still going to do what the engineers say, right? So what is it about these companies, and then why they have to create this cult of personality to get us to want to use AI? And I'm all about AI. I think it's super cool. I love when I push the margarita button on my blender and it makes one. That's AI. I love all that stuff. But why do we have to go through this exercise every time we iterate to one of these new platforms, new things where they say, we're going to save you time. You can put all your recipes in your PC. Okay, great. All these other things that we're going to do that are just so far from where we end up. Why do we have to go through this process over and over again?
We software people as a discipline, we are better than building walls than Donald Trump. We're like really good at building walls, and we'll build the wall up and then we'll put all the instructions on the wall for you people on the other side of the wall. And we'll come over and we'll like listen to the wall for a minute and then we'll get away because it gets out of hand. No way would a developer talk to a user. that would be
Right.
not allowed. Like marketing would get in the way before you got to talk to a user. We set all this stuff up this way. One of the funny things I discovered in the 90s, of course, as the industry is coming up and I'm coming up, is I actually wanted to talk to my customers. And trade show came along, and I'm going out there to demo my own product to customers. I had this one lady come up to me at Boston Macworld 1996, and she was like a typical, you would call it like a typical Boston computer nerd person. Short, her hair was disheveled. Nothing against short, Pete. Absolutely nothing against short. So people can't do much about that except, go back in time and fix their diets as kids. That's about all they could do about it. Not her fault. But her teeth were terrible. Bottom tooth smiler with teeth missing and yellow, and just like, I don't want your marketing garbage. I want to talk to the engineer. Can you get him for me? I'm like, no, I can't do that. I just do marketing, right? But no, I was out there. I want to talk to these people. I want to know how they're using the product. Pete, I actually want to sit next to you as you use it, not ask you in a survey. By the way, you know what they call that survey from question to question? You're going to love this. First punchline of the day. It's a workflow.
Yeah, I know. It's dumb. It's dumb. I hate it. And they presume answers.
Right.
Like, if you want a fake answer, let me give it to you then. I'm glad to oblige you with your bullshit. Or how much time did our program save you? I don't fucking know. And then they have the audacity to tell me, oh, we've saved you 80 hours this month.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, like Instacart is always telling me how many lifetimes it saved me since I signed up. It claims to have saved me literally like 100 days. I mean, maybe I should use it less if it saved me that much time.
Sure, and I understand the value, time, money, my work, all these things. I get all of that. So I guess let's get into the AI thing, and we talk about predictive analysis or putting together reports or pitches like we talked about earlier before we did the show. There's all these things where it is nice to get you off of zero and towards a solution, right? But again, I'm big on where the work is, right? And so where the work for me in writing a book is figuring out how to get my damn hands on a damn keyboard and being left alone and focused, because I can write good enough to do that. My problem is getting on the things. So does AI solve that problem for me? I don't know. And then how expensive is it for me to do that instead of just fucking sitting down and writing?
Well, I mean, they're going to restart 3 Mile Island so you can make your pictures of graphics, right? For your show. 3 Mile. Okay. In Absurdistan 2024 that we might have imagined in, I don't know, 1990, could you imagine them restarting 3 Mile Island?
No.
So that you could make pretty pictures for this thing called a podcast, right?
Yeah.
No, that's unimaginable. And yet that's actually going to happen, which is, when you talk about the cost of this thing, the computing power that goes into these systems is so much that we need, nuclear power plants dedicated to them. We need giant, we need these giant buildings full of the fastest chips, stacked and racked, with the networking between them that's, moving more data than we've ever imagined in a minute. Using a whole bunch of power, using a whole bunch of cooling. And
this is one of the things.
Billions of dollars.
I want to add this into the mix. When we think about, like our transition from carbon-based energy, which is all going to be carbon-based energy, but whatever. As we try to transition away from that, much like computer memory, I can't even comprehend how much memory we take now over an old, like, oh, you got a 2 gig hard drive. Like you're not even an adorable little baby. You're a zygote, right? Like you don't even exist. So our desire, our need for electricity, for cooling, which is, by the way, electricity, me, I'm going to say it's all thermodynamics. So this all goes into this, right? This cost, right? So you have to not only offshore your consumption, but also your consumption of the cloud and all of the billions of servers that are serving us with, and that costs money and time.
Pete, all these giant things that we think about, money and time and everything else, they're doing this one thing. Can I share a screen?
Please.
May I? Like to.
Yeah.
I got to find a mouse, and then I could share a screen. I'm going to hit present.
I know the guy that invented the mouse.
That's great. Oh, I'm trying to share screen. Let's go a window, and we'll go with this. So, Pete, I just want to show you what all this stuff is, because it's really simple to understand what's going on.
Okay.
Like super simple here. So these are my models. They're running on my computer, or they're available on my computer. Llama-file.exe actually make this available for free from my website, demomachine.net. This is like the program for LLMs. So you notice it's not very big. It's like 22 megs. And this file itself, actually, if you just rename it llama-file.whatever, it will run on a Mac. This exe runs on Windows. This will run on a Mac. It'll run on a Linux machine. It'll run on your Raspberry Pi if you have one of those. It's a really amazing program that Mozilla Foundation helped me make. But there's only one program that you need to do text-based LLM, text generation. Okay. And then all these other things you see here, these giga files, they are the models. Okay. So you see, they're kind of big. Like this one, Mistral 7B Instruct version 0.3 is like almost 8 gigs. And this one, MetaLlama 8B is 8.5 gigs. And this one, Google Gemma 9B Instruct is 9.5 gigs. Right. So those are the models. Those are all they are is that they're a bunch of these weights. It's what they call them. They're weights. They're numbers. And I can run one of these I have a little script here. Let's start Google Gemma, and I'll just run this script. I'll show you what this looks like when I run it. So it takes a moment here to get started. And after a few moments,
Well, Brad works on a few moments.
Yes.
I'll say, hey, everybody, you're watching the Break It Down show. It's always great when you subscribe. Do I have to ask people to subscribe? Don't they know? People know this already.
They know.
Bam. We killed the perfect amount of time.
You did. So I'm going to go full screen with this. And what we're looking at here, this is Google Gemma 9B Instruct. And I could tell it, hey, tell me a story. By the way, I'm not using it in chat mode. I'm using it in what's called completion mode. So imagine that you and I speak Esperanza, as a second language. Think of that as chat. That's our second language. But our first language is English. We're talking in our first language right now. And I'm going to just say, tell me a story. I call that a cue instead of a prompt. And then check this out. It just starts writing a story, one word at a time, basically. Now let's go for a little bit here. And I'll stop it while it's doing it. And we'll just go back a little bit. The old lighthouse keeper, Silas, squinted at the churning sea, the storm. And let's just go back to here. And let's see what happens if I start it from here. Because it had said had raged for days. Okay, well, we're going to get had raged for days. A furious beast knocking on the rocky coast. He'd seen many storms in his 70 years. So it's sort of picked up that I want these in like short lines. You see that now? It's kind of picked up that style. But every time I run that, it's going to do something a little bit different. Let's back up and do it again. And let's see what it does this time. Okay, now we don't have a whole bunch of spaces between it. And rocky shore, he'd seen many storms in his 70 years. That was a little bit different. This one felt different, heavier, laden with an ancient primal anger. So what I want to show you that's actually happening here is that it's using that model, that big 9 gig file, to figure out one word at a time here. And if I start it here, it's going to figure out the next word, the next word, and the next word. If I restart it here, it's going to do that again. And it's a likely word. It's not the next word. It's a next word. It's a possible next word. It's a statistical model. We'll get into that in a minute.
Right.
Let's go back here to tell me a story. Tell me a story about Eeyore. I want to do something that will maximize Pete's annoyance here. Because
mission accomplished.
Yes, I know, because I can't type. So let's just do this. Tell me a story about Eeyore and Paul Bunyan. And it's going to start telling me a story about Eeyore and Paul Bunyan. Oh, look, it knows Eeyore is having a particularly gloomy day. He knows about Eeyore, blah, 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 blah. Now let's let's focus this a little bit more. Eeyore and Paul Bunyan helping, I can't type, helping the West Sacramento Athletics attract new supporters. Get it, Pete? Athletic supporters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this unlikely duo of Eeyore the donkey and Paul Bunyan, the legendary lumberjack, blah, 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 found themselves in the peculiar situation trying to boost the morale of the West Sacramento Athletics, a minor league team. Oh, that's terrible. He doesn't know the story. Google Gemma doesn't know what's going on. I don't see the point. Eo mumbled. And I think we can quit it there. Pete, this is called what I'm doing here in queuing this story. And then you notice that after I give it some hints, it can go on from there. That's like prompting with chat. And this turns out to be the most powerful place to get the LLM to do what you want. And in fact, it's really, as you saw there, it was pretty inexpensive for me to type that and to get it going. Now, what a lot of businesses, they're approached with, hey, I want to do AI, I want to do LLMs. And their first inclination, because the engineers are in their year, their first inclination is, I'd like to train an LLM. So it's an LLM trained on my business data and everything. Turns out that's expensive. And the training there is not just putting in, some parameters for a story or parameters for a report. The training there is putting in, is writing a whole document of facts about your business and then running it with all those GPUs to create a new model. And guess what happens with that new model that you've created? It's not terribly effective. Isn't that weird? It's certainly not as effective as like a prompt or a queue that you're doing here.
Right.
By the way, Pete, this is called the context window. The context window for an LLM is kind of like your prompt or your queue, and then all of the text that it's generated for that. Context windows, this one here, we're working with a context window that's about 8K, and that's a function of the model itself. Some models that are popular have got context windows as high as 128K. But 128K is still like what would you call that? Like maybe 8 to 10, typed pages?
Sure.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
It's not a lot. So you're not going to write a whole book with an LLM, even with a giant context window.
So when you're trying to use this, backing up, it's doing a predictive model based on stats, like whatever percentage of the time after you type in the word storm, you get the word
like autocomplete on your phone, just a little bit more complicated and using a lot more text that you've written. Yes.
Right. And autocomplete on my phone is dumb. I mean, it is never right. It takes away the word fucking and puts ducking in there, even though you're like, no, phone, right?
I'm not right. I what could you be ducking that you might be fucking? That's a good question. I'm trying to think of an example. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
I don't either. But so when we're talking about predictive modeling, this seems pretty boring. Like is that smart enough to run my, like if I've got a very successful pitch, like my pitch for getting people on the show, right? It works and it's, I don't have to change it. I type it up by hand every time. Sure, I could cut and paste it, but I just type it out. It doesn't take that much longer. And at least I'm doing it and I can modify it if I need to, right? But if I have a pitch for my company and I'm selling something in a proposal and I just know what it is, do I want to slow down to try to figure out how to make this tool work for something that I already know how to do? I just want to go out and close deals. Like when I used to work at CDW, they would constantly be like, oh, we're going to have a meeting on whatever it was going to be. And I'm like, my job is to be on the phones. I'm not going to yet. I would skip the meetings but
then they tell you, Pete, we can gather all the information about this customer and make the perfect pitch tuned to the customer. Right. And you're like, yes.
There you go. Yeah.
And here's the thing. You've been a salesman, you've known the process. You can read from the customer pretty quickly what they need from your pitch, how you should tune it to them. You can feel this. They're not, they don't want these widgets. They want these widgets. I'm going to talk about these widgets. They don't want our service, but they do want our installation. I'm going to talk about how we install. Like you can make those call. you can make those calls immediately, and you can even sense, even if they don't use the word installation or what your service plan is, you can sense, hey, he's focused on that. Now, what are we doing next week with this, Pete? Well, you're probably installing it. We're not talking about the 2-year warranty at that point.
Right.
Right. These are things, a human being does really, really well. Now, if you want the computer to do it, you've got to feed all that information and all that context into the computer and hope that it can then, sort that out. Whereas, human beings are a little bit more efficient at that. So there are a lot of systems that they want to sell right now that are like, oh, we can make a customized pitch for every customer that you have. Your customer needs to see a pitch once, maybe twice. If they get this customized pitch and then they get a wholly different customized pitch, what are they going to think of you? They're going to think you don't have your act together. Whereas if you have 2 or 3 canned pitches and you decide which one you're going to send to the customer at that particular time, they're going to have a consistent experience. They're going to think you have your act together. So again, probably overcomplicating that. Why would we overcomplicate that? Let's say you're a boss of a company. You're frustrated that the salespeople come in and they do their own thing and you don't know what they do and you feel like you're paying them a lot for what you don't know what they do. Well, why wouldn't you want to try a system where you purportedly know what it does?
Sure.
What's the answer to that? Why wouldn't you want to try a system where you purportedly know what it does?
Wow.
Well, the answer is your live salespeople outperform that system. That's the answer. Okay. Sometimes you have to accept, hey, I get these results. I don't have control over how the people do the work, but they get me the results.
Right.
That's what a good business person can, kind of reconcile in their head is, yes, these people are inefficient. Yes, they take long lunches and whatever else. Oh, they're closing deals. Okay, no worries.
All right, so we're looking at this window to put together a pitch in this case, and if the problem is something like, hey, between the leadership of the company, the marketing department, and the sales department, there's not a path of success there, right? So the manager doesn't want to spend money on marketing, so marketing can't give the sales guys the tools they need, and so they're going to like, hey, we're going to fix this, right? This happens all the time. We're going to fix this with another solution. We're not going to invest in marketing because it's hard to get marketing to work. So instead of that, we're going to run ads on Instagram, and we're going to use AI to make copy for us. And then the sales guys are just going to reap in all these sales because we've automated these things, and we can just automate the shit out of this and use AI. I mean, I think that's a viable scenario that someone's being pitched somewhere. Maybe it's not as rough as what I just did off the top of my head, but that's a viable product someone's going to sell.
Surprisingly, Pete, all the time, and it's resonating right now. And so what companies do is companies invest a whole bunch of money in this, and then they're like, okay, well, what do we need to do to make this better pitch? Well, you need to train your AI. That's what you need to do. You need to do fine tuning on an LLM in order to make it your company's AI and then have it spit out the pitches. And unfortunately, what companies are finding right now is that's very, very expensive. And it's got about, these AI projects. Economist Asa Moglu, he just won a Nobel Peace Prize in economics. The Nobel Prize in economics, about a month and a half ago, he put out an article basically saying that 10% of AI projects over the past year have come to fruition. And they're mostly
10%, you said? 10%? 10?
And they're mostly in infrastructure, not in applications. Right. So we're not doing, as an industry, we're not doing very well with this technology, actually bringing things to the finish line. We're doing great with little demos. A little demo is, here, Pete, I want to pitch you a product for pitching your baseball consulting. I see you've got the Not Guy Eddie hat on. You've become an affiliate there, and a respected baseball historian on Twitter, and you're pitching your services. And in about 10 seconds, I just made you an AI that pitches your consulting. Okay, well, that's great. I got you 50% of the way there. Now we want to get you the next 50%. What's that going to cost? A couple $100,000 to train an LLM. How about that? You in?
Sure. In this
No,
case,
you're
right?
not.
So we want to go forward. Okay. Okay. I thought maybe I needed to go with you.
Absolutely, no, you're not. But there are
Yeah.
a lot of people who are in because they say, "Oh yeah, of course. If I could do that so quickly, imagine if I put that $200,000 in, what I'll get out of it. You won't get much more."
Right.
And that
Right.
right now is the problem that we have with AI and LLMs in the industry. Is we're trying to squeeze a lot out of them. We're not taking the easy wins that are on the table. This
Yeah.
might be an easy win, is just, here, give me this consulting pitch. I'm going to go send this. I'm going to copy this, put it in an email, send this to somebody. I've got a customer. It's fine. That's great. Let's do that. If that gets you a customer, perfect. That's great. Take the easy win.
Yeah. Take the easy win. All right. So getting back to where the work is, right? So, so we have these tools. They come and they pitch me this thing that you just talked about. How do I get savvy with how I actually apply AI? Because look, I know where work needs to be done in my organization, right? And again, everybody should PayPal link and kick in there. But I know where the work is. I know who I need to connect with. I know I know how to do these things, right? So when I'm trying to think about how do I use AI, like I was messing around with some AI things this morning, prepping for this episode, and I had it work on some writing for me, and I'm like, it's just not what I want, right, at all. And so again, by the time, if I wanted 250 words written about something, I'm just going to write it myself. So for me, that's not marketable to say, hey, we're going to save you time writing 250 words, because I'm just going to do that myself, and I'm going to be happy with whatever version that I come up with. Maybe it's a taste thing, but where is the spot for someone who has a small to medium-sized company? They've got a sales team, and they're trying to, look, they're just trying to sort it out like all of us.
So we'll just talk about written stuff. Forget the picture stuff, forget the video stuff. That's a little bit different. But for written stuff, I think the thing is try to use it and see if it does what you want. If it does what you want, take that. And if it doesn't do what you want, realize investing a lot in getting it to write what you want is probably less efficient than just doing it the way you want in the first place. Which it's kind of funny because, okay, I don't know, I have to write a whole bunch of proposals or whatever else. Do I hire somebody to write these proposals for me? Okay. And what's the business answer to that? The business answer to that is try them out. If they're good at it, let them do it. If they're not good at it and they're going to hate their job, they're going to hate you, and you're going to hate paying them, don't hire them to do that. Right. It's a real simple answer. There's no one size fit all answer. You got to think about, what's the problem? Who do we have available? What do we have available? Let's try it. Let's see how it works. And let's not be afraid to say no.
Okay, let's back up for a sec. Let's do a different version of this. Okay, so let's say you're my friend, you want to help me out, and I'm like, for sure, one of the things I can do well is I can produce podcasts. So someone has a dream, but they don't have the capacity to pump out podcasts. Now, it's a lot of work for me, and I always explain to them, like, there's so much work that I'm doing in the background. Some of it's creative, some of it's just nugging out radio button and typing information. It takes over 40 hours of straight work to create a podcast, soup to nuts, to do it professionally, right?
Yep.
And so I want to pick up some podcast clients. I want to find, identify some people that I could pitch, this university, this magazine that publishes article, and I want to see if I can pick up a couple of clients. Where am I going to use AI to help me in a very small shop, right? It's boutique-y as hell around here. So how do I leverage AI to my advantage reliably, or is it even possible?
Well, I mean, the first answer to that is if it's not working, don't double down on it. Okay, so we've talked about this before, both in private conversations and on Break It Down show. There's this tool that makes clips, and I think it's in StreamYard for you.
Yeah, they have one in there. Yep,
they have one in there, an AI tool, and your use of it has been, okay, it does make a clip. Yes, it makes a clip. Yes, it publishes the clips to the various platforms, be it Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever else. Are the clips terribly interesting and terribly focused? And the answer is hell no, never. It's just so I always, I see this and I'm like, well, Pete, why would you do this if they're not interesting? Because I can tell you they're not interesting. I watch all of them and I know every one of them that's not interesting. I can give you the most insight on that than anybody could. Certainly an AI can't. The answer is you're trying to publish that because having content out there that's fresh, that's there, it gets people interacting with your show. Hopefully the interaction isn't so negative they unsubscribe or whatever else. It doesn't seem to be. That doesn't seem to be hurting you, but it's definitely helping you having more content out there, even if it's not like the greatest quality. Okay.
It's possibly helping me, right?
It's possibly helping you. If it's possibly helping you and you could possibly measure it and it doesn't cost you anything to do, then yeah, do it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the way you got to evaluate a lot of these tools, because they're not going to be like having a thinking person. And then they're not going to be like having a thinking person who can read your mind and do what you would do. They're never going to do that. So you have to, you have to just decide, hey, is this sort of helping? If it's sort of helping, that's great. If it's not sort of helping, then hey, we're not going to use this, and see what tools come lining up to try to help. And that would be my strategy. Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered statistical predictive wordsmithing, which is at least able to continue to try things, right? You can stop it and go forward and everything else. We've talked about the illusion of what AI can do, and when it does do something, how real it is, right? We talked about that a little bit. What else do you want to get into?
Let's go back to the statistical thing, because we had a little discussion a while back that I think is kind of worth revisiting for the audience. And we talk about these LLMs and we say, hey, it's a statistical model. It's a predictive model. It predicts what the next token or word is going to be in an answer, and it just repeatedly does that. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't stop and think about where it wants to go. It doesn't plan. There's no subroutine for divine interference. It's statistical, and it guesses a next best token, meaning it doesn't even pick the very best. It kind of guesses what might be the very best. So I wanted to look at some other statistical things just to try to see if we could draw some inspiration from them. And so the first statistical thing I learned, and I don't know whose law it's called, not safe for work here, guys, so turn it down if you're at work, is the average human being has one tit and one ball. Okay?
Yeah.
Like, you add up the number of boobs, you add up the number of balls, you divide by the number of people, and both are one. Now, there is no human being out there that has one tit and one ball. Or if they're, okay, let's just say it's a very exceptional person that would have, that would be that way. It's not common, certainly not common. What this tells us about averages is that averages do not tell us much about the particulars. And that's an important concept to get. So yes, while it's funny, while you're learning what an average is, it's actually really, really deep. We don't have that person, unless you have a really, really large group and there's something really weird going on. We don't have that person. Second thing you could kind of learn from averages, let's talk about stocks and portfolios and stuff. If you're a savvy investor, and you've known this since probably like the mid 2000s with the emergence of funds like Vanguard, BlackRock, et cetera, that your best investment choice is to stick it in a fund, an index fund like Vanguard. You're not going to, over any time horizon that's reasonable, call it 2 years, 5 years, or whatever else, you with the best information you can get, picking the best stocks the way that you'd pick them, are not going to beat the averages. All right.
Right.
So why is it that everybody just doesn't get into an index fund? Index funds they control a significant share of the market, but they don't control all the market. And you kind of step back and you say, well, what if everybody did get in an index fund? Then there aren't people out there that are trying to, arbitrage information they have, make their best picks, try to understand technology, what's going to work, what's not, blah, blah, blah. And so if everybody's in an index fund and nobody's, making these bets at the, the little level with individual stocks and stuff, guess what? There's nothing to average.
Right.
Right. In which case that collapses very quickly. So it's important. It's important when we have these things that average things and we want to look at the average, that we don't let it get in the way of actually having the diversity of things in order to look at. Election is just over, and there's, of course, a lot of finger pointing. every 4 years we go through this, and
Right.
there's pollsters who were right in the past who were absolutely wrong this time. Invariably, it's going to happen. And of course, it's going to happen because the pollsters are all over the place. Turns out there was one poll that was dead on this time. And it was like the index fund of polls. It was the Real Clear Politics poll. And the Real Clear Politics poll, what they do is any poll they know of, they just say, okay, you're in our average. It's not even like the Dow Jones Industrials, which just they're about to kick out Intel and replace Intel with NVIDIA. It's not like they just pick some and make their average and make their score good. No, you have a poll and you publish your poll, you're going to be in the Real Clear Politics average. They're totally happy to get you. And it turns out they were sort of the closest predictor all along of this election, because they were sort of like an index poll. If you throw out the polls that sucked, their average is not going to be right. How weird is that?
Yeah.
And so we get to LLMs and large language model. You saw that.
Can I jump in here and ask a question? Because
yes,
I'm curious when we think about things in terms of like what's average, right?
Yeah.
When you read something that's filled with cliches,
mm-hmm.
it's bad. Nobody likes it. Stands out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, should we also be accounting for mode as well? Like if you said, half the people have one ball, one tit or whatever, and if you said, well, what's the mode? And all of a sudden, you've got a bimodal curve, right? And very few people, one tit, one ball. So, is that the answer? Is to put like a mode regulator on there? So you're like, hey, let's not do the modal answer. Let's do something that's submodal.
So sometimes
I'm probably using these terms incorrectly, but
yeah, probably. And I'm not going to try to correct you on them or anything, because I'm going to end up butchering them too, technically.
Yeah.
But I think you get to what we talked about in the beginning, which is you have a lot of engineers who think they know what the hell's going on. And so they sit behind their wall and they come up with their explanation and stuff for what's going on in the real world without going out to the real world and looking at what's in the real world.
Right.
And so they come up with their statistic, this average or whatever. And sometimes that average is good and sometimes it's not too useful. So getting to LLMs, for instance, when I showed you that one that was like 8 gigabytes. It's actually trained on petabytes of data. That's not 1,000 times 8 gigabytes. That's 1,000,000 times 8 gigabytes. And maybe it's 8 petabytes, maybe it's 20 petabytes. It's a lot of data. And what happens is those weights that fit into the 8 gigabytes, they're calculated by taking a complicated, kind of a complicated formula, consider it an average. It's not really an average, but just sort of, philosophically consider it an average of all these books, all these websites, all these whatever. Any individual book or website that we have, if we took it out of the training set, it wouldn't affect the weights in any measurable way, right? But if we take all the books and all the training out of the training set and we only have a small training set, yes, that would affect those weights significantly. That's why we take this wide swath of things and we say, hey, what's sort of the linguistic average of this stuff? And we're going to capture it here. And, you've got this linguistic average and now you expect to think. Do you think that's going to work out for you? No,
I don't.
But the optimists in the tech industry think it will. And that's why I bring you back to this, and I bring you back to, hey, how does completion work? And what's the illusion with chat and all this stuff? Because when they're pitching you a solution with this, remember at the end of the day, they're sitting there with a linguistic average, and that's how they're solving things. They're just running it really, really fast and hoping that it can solve these big problems that you have.
When I completed my BA degree, I was like half a quarter credit hour short or something like that. So I owed 8 hours. Who knows why this math worked out? But you have to go take a class. There happens to be basically like Saturday school. that you can go and just take a 1-day class and you'll satisfy it. And it was storytelling, perfect for me, within my block of field. I'm like, oh, this will work out great. And one of the things we did was we told a story, and we did it within a human LLM. So I would say once, and the next person would say upon, and the next person would say, something, and then everybody had one word, and we created this story. And you have everybody's trying to free radical this thing, or
Right.
they're trying to go with the flow, right? And so there's this competition for it. So really, it's an LLM thing that we did. And the story was interesting because you think you know where it's going, and then someone says, appropriately, they say raspberry instead of road. And you're like, oh man, that totally changed that. So the next person now has to scramble through their LLM and go, what comes after, he grabbed the raspberry instead of fork or whatever. And what does he do next? Right.
See,
and then
you bring
so
up
it just kept
something
changing.
you bring up something really interesting there too, because the way a real LLM does, it doesn't have a plan beforehand. It's just going a word at a time. And then the understanding of where it's going is evolving one word at a time. But as you said, somebody, you can kind of pick up where it's going, and somebody might say, no, it's not going there. I'm going to make a left turn.
It's not.
Right here. Right. It's not going there. And then everybody's just kind of looking like, oh, damn, what happened there? Well, the LLM doesn't look at like, oh, damn, what happened there? It just continues to go because that's what it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So when someone says, Brad, I need your help, and they're running whatever kind of company, or they're working on whatever kind of product, like what's the sweet spot where you're like, if you're in product management, that's where you need to use AI? Is there a certain industry? Is the answer always negative? Are you able to help companies find good solutions for these things? I mean, look, I think the best advice I give people in the podcast world is don't do it. Like if you want to spend a bunch of money and a bunch of time on a possibility of not even getting past 1 week as a show producer, then you should do this. But otherwise, take that money and time and put it into actual marketing, or yes, do it. I'll go on that ride with you. But for the most part, don't, because it's very competitive. It's hard to find purchase, and you probably can find a better use for your time and money.
Yeah. So if they're thinking about AI, they're probably thinking about AI because somebody has told them that if their company doesn't think about AI, their company is going to be like, just trampled over by everybody who is. So that's the first bias that's there, is they want to solve it with AI. And so the first thing I need to pull them back from, whether they're going to go and invest in this and become, the most forward AI company, or whether they're going to just ignore it. The first thing I have to pull them back from is this idea that they're going to get run over by somebody who is using it, that they have to do it, that they have to take this machine optimized, automated approach when there are other approaches that are available. And this machine optimized approach does not have known costs. And in fact, it has a known success rate that's very, very, very low. Right. And it has costs that are very high. You don't get into this cheap. Even when you're talking about, say, 20 people using ChatGPT, that's 20 times $25 a month, which is $500, which is, you're going to spend $6,000 on this. And, then I get to the next question is, okay, where's all your data going? Because it's going into the cloud, to somebody else's cloud. You don't have you don't have a guarantee that it's kept private and stuff. And, maybe your ideas do need to be kept private. Maybe your customers do deserve their privacy kept as well. So their details and their problems aren't aired to the world. If somebody comes along and does a report that says, hey, 20% of people are, 20% of ChatGPT uses are to do porn play acting or whatever. And 15% are used to do proposals to, groups in Midwestern Tennessee. Well, hey, that's great. Now everybody knows that to get to my group in Midwestern Tennessee, you got to use ChatGPT. What kind of garbage am I going to get in proposals when people know that? I mean, even something as innocuous as that can kind of, throw off your business if it becomes known. So I would tell them, hey, let's consider the place and whatever. Let's consider whether humans actually do this better. Let's set up a fair competition. If you're going to replace humans, let's make sure that you're replacing them with something that actually is better or is adequate or is cheaper or whatever else. Let's set those up, and then let's go ahead and kind of look at this. I would say continue on your path, the path that you think you're on, and I'm going to set up a parallel path, and we're going to be able to do comparisons along the way. And my parallel path is going to be, you're running the software locally. You're doing it on your own systems. You're maintaining privacy. You're not bound to a network. Sometimes you just don't have a network. I mean, like if I'm getting on a flight or whatever, okay, that's going to become less of a problem. But if I'm on a flight and I want to brainstorm and stuff, and I have to pay, what is it? I don't know, what's it cost now to get the Wi-Fi on a flight?
It's dumb, and then it doesn't work half the time, and so you're just like, why did I even?
Got to be a computer expert to do it and whatever. I just want the thing to work. Well, if I've got my copy of Microsoft Word or whatever I write locally in a word processor with, and you saw the software I was showing on the screen, that's running on my computer. I don't have to have a network connection to make that work. Mm-hmm. It can just work. I can work with it together. So that's a consideration.
That includes, like, if your pitch has an AI element in there that you want to display for your client, that you're trying to get, that's also on your computer.
Yes, exactly. I keep that on my computer. It doesn't get out unless I intentionally put it out, like on a Zoom or, on a website or whatever else. I have to intentionally publish it to distribute that information. That's important.
Okay.
So yes, I'm talking about parallel paths. I'm talking about maintaining privacy. I'm talking about running on your own stuff so that, one of the problems you have, especially with chat mode on these things like ChatGPT and Claude and whatever else, is they're trained not to go into certain areas of things. You might call it sort of a politically correct filter, if you like. And while that's nice, at the same time, I mean, if I need depleted uranium to shore up protection of my vehicle, well, ChatGPT is probably not going to be too keen on telling me how to make depleted uranium panels to make my vehicle bulletproof. Just not
right.
Not politically correct. Not something it wants to discuss.
Or what if you're a sexy movie vendor and you're trying to sell the back catalog to Dark Brother Movies or whatever it is, it's like, oh, you can't write all that here. Like, I need to be able to go, this is the industry I make, because there are sexual terms in a lot of industries.
Look, what if you're a nun and you're selling donkeys? You can't peddle your ass all over town. I mean, that's just not going to work there. Okay, these are silly examples, but in practice, people run into these limitations very quickly. A mutual friend, Rabbit Hole, has been on your show, probably most famous for showing that Google Gemini would rather start a nuclear war than misgender Bruce Jenner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I want to show my customers is it's not actually doing that. That's just that political correctness is actually just the illusion too. And by using a local LLM, you can see and using completion mode rather than chat mode, you can see how you can give it information to have it make the choice that you want. And rolling morality, rolling decision making, rolling these higher level things, rather than just, kind of mindlessly writing out words into the behavior. That's part of the illusion. I want you to see the illusion. I want you to see where that comes into play. And then, to paraphrase Guns N' Roses, right? Once you understand the illusion, I'd like you to use the illusion. I'd like 2 albums of it. I'd like one that's blue, one that's sort of yellow. I'd like them to be filled with songs about how you use your illusion. That's what I'd like. And I'd like us, 30 some odd years later to think that it's like the greatest double album in history. And I'll fight you on that beat.
It's funny. So one of the best use cases that worked out with AI was that dude that bought chat.com the other day and sold it for a $5 million profit. It's always the shovel maker who wins, the guy who makes the broomsticks.
Who bought it? This is the best part, is that OpenAI bought it. And when you go to it now, when you go to chat.com, it goes to chatgpt.com. It's as if they're about to take the GPT out of the branding and puts you face to face with chatting, which, in a previous show, we showed how chat was an illusion. Well, it's not really what the computer is doing. The computer is completing. It's just stopping for you to have a turn, which is pretty wild. Yeah.
That's awesome. We've done about an hour. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up?
I think we're good. I think the thing I'd like to sum up with is, when you talk to me about these things, you get from all different angles, all different approaches. I will try 100 different ways. As Pete and I have talked about probably 100 different ways in this series of shows. I will help you understand what's going on with AI so that you can apply it to your business without getting fooled and without getting stolen from. And I think I think it's probably a pretty valuable service in this market right now, because what most people are doing is they're pitching their solutions and they're saying how wonderful they are, and not a lot of blowback on what's really going on. People aren't
they're
successful.
batting less than 10%, right?
Yeah, that's not good. Not good at all.
Yeah. All right, let me run the thing here. Everybody else, I'll see y'all later.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching.